So I want to show you my latest play toy, my vise. Now, I apologize, be a long video because there's a lot of features about this toy. So let's dive in. So this vise is made out of these two blocks here and this guide pin and a bench screw. The blocks are from what's called a die set. This is a little baby die set. What a die set does has an upper and a lower block. The upper, you put your die. The lower is, you put your punch and the die down below, and goes up and down. The pins keep everything aligned and running square. This is a bigger die set. The pins here are 1.25 inch diameter. These are only 3/4. These were 6 inches long. I knocked them out. I put in 28-inch long ones. So because of this Yoast bench screw I got off of Amazon, it's long enough the vise will open 14 inches. The screw itself is a 4 threads to the inch Acme, which is just perfect for a bench. Gives you just for a bench vise, gives you just the right amount of power to really clamp stuff. So on this vise, what I've done is, to begin with, I have 1/2 inch drilled reamed holes on the top. That allows me to use little guides like this on top, either here, or since my bench top is also 1.5 inches and has 1/2 inch holes in line, I can clamp and grab larger pieces very easily, like that, solidly, for working on that. At the same time, when these guys go in, little magnets hold them in place. I had to do that because the heads are so heavy compared to that little pin. With a little vibration, it'll fall out. These others here that I also have made, smaller ones, these don't need to have the magnets to hold them in because the head isn't as heavy compared to the weight of the pin. So that stays in there happily even when there's a lot of vibration. So on these holes, since they're drilled and reamed, you want to keep them clean so that a 1/2 inch pin will go in easily like that. But there's chips fall in the bottom. So what I did was I drilled holes through here, so this hole actually goes all the way down, and you can blow the chips out with an air hose. Keep it clean. Now this hole isn't just drilled and reamed all that way. It's only reamed about 1.5 inches or so, and then it's threaded with a 1/2-13. So I can take a 1/2-13 socket head cap like this and clamp stuff down, or a short one, whatever you want to do. Also, like here, I've made up this little accessory vise that can mount very quickly on top of the existing jaws, and this can mount in any of 5 positions across the top of the jaws. And this is another guide and pin out of a larger die set, which I'm not using anything for, so I made this up. And this gives me a pattern maker's vise now that can hold tapered pieces like this very happily and easily. Now the next thing I want to do on this little accessory vise is on the back of this guy down here, I want to add on a little jaw, so when I take this off, turn it over, that jaw comes up to this side, and now we'll clamp against here. And that jaw, I want to use just get a serrated jaw out of a Wilton vise or something like that. So at least it's a serrated to one side and then smooth on the other, because a serrated on one side is going to give enough clamping, gripping power for this level of vise. This is a lighter weight. Obviously, this is not like my 150-pound 6-inch Wilton bullet vise over there, which will hold anything just forever. This is just for smaller, obviously, light bench work, so it doesn't need to be as aggressive. So this is a little addition I've put together for my large vise here. Oh, and this is a 3/8 T-handle hex wrench that I made up, and it since I use it continually on this bench here, I have a storage spot for it right here, because this bench has half 13 holes all over it. So I have a full clamping set over here for clamping anything down as you would on a milling table. For welding, since my welder is right here, I keep all of that close at hand so I can do that quickly. Another way to hold stuff down on the bench and on the vise jaws for welding or anything of that sort is one of these from Vice Grip. They make these for, they market it as a drill press clamp. You're supposed to put it to a hole in the drill press table and put a wing nut on the bottom and you clamp stuff. But I found that a 1/2 inch hole, 1.5 inches long, when you put this in and then go to clamp, it cams itself into that hole, so it's very, very solid. So I use these, I have a whole set of these for welding. Also, this can go in the holes on the front of this vise and can clamp here, can hold items which are then quite reasonably square. I'm just trying to get this put together quickly here. Oh, there we go. Ah, there we go. Yeah. So now this is quite reasonably square to this top of the bench, and then can even adjust the gap on the weld, right? Bring it in closely, and then I have just the right amount of gap, for instance, for a heavy penetration or whatever else. So these guys are just incredible. Another thing I want to do with this vise is I want to drill, ream, and tap down the end here so I can add on extension jaws if I want to for something longer and go all the way to the floor, because right now all I have is about 1 inch from the edge back here to the edge of this guide pin that goes through the back jaw. Oh, also on these guide pins, since this is die block, it's typically in a press where this entire face or the point load here would be where the force is. So it keeps it pretty parallel to begin with. Obviously with the vise, if I'm going to clamp something up here, the jaw is going to kind of torque. So what I did to prevent a little of that, because this little guide down here is only maybe 3 inches long, back under the bench you can't see, but about here on the bench I've made a little framework which holds UHMW blocks, which are adjustable with a screw, to push on the top of those guide rods. So the rod is here and the guide block is on top. So if the bench, if the vise wants to torque a little bit, it does keep it from doing that so much. Also, it makes it a lot easier to open it when it's out at 14 inches, when this 1.5 inch thick jaw is torquing down on these guys. So that's how I have softened that problem. Though also I should point out that the only lubrication I use on the rods and the screw is good old Johnson's tree wax, and I put it on with an old toothbrush like this, and I just rub it on a little bit. And the reason I do that is that ends up being a reasonably dry lubricant and doesn't collect a lot of particularly grinding swarf out of the air from a hand grinder and that kind of stuff, because that will really chew up the guides over time. So I want to keep a dry lube on there so it doesn't just pull stuff in there and turn it into a lapping kind of action in there. Also what I've done is on this outer jaw I added a secondary face. The reason I did that is that, you know, when you're clamping with a big face, flat face like this, what happens if here's the two jaws, for instance, coming together, this outer jaw, since the clamping force is at the bottom and the resistance maybe of a small piece at the top is at the top, this jaw will bend or it'll torque, and then you get an inappropriate clamping of things. So what I've done is I added a secondary face, and this is mounted pretty much on 3 points. Well, it's kind of a line and 2 points. It's mounted with a single bolt down here, right near the bottom, and that bolt goes through a washer, which goes through a big hole in this guy. The washer is only welded across the bottom portion of itself, and the washer is positioned halfway between the thickness of that 1/2-inch face. So with a bolt through that washer, it's kind of a little spring loaded a little bit. And then I've added 1/4-20 socket head cap screws at the top, which I can preload this jaw out a little bit. And I'll show you what that does. So when I go to clamp here, on the initial touch, because that jaw is preloaded, it's only touching at the top. But as I go to tighten it down, it grabs a little bit more evenly and even more evenly. So now that's reasonably solid for this kind of a jaw, this kind of a vise, for fiddling around with something. Obvious, if I want to make it stiffer, I can take this pin, push it through, and now it's going to be pushing against the pin as well as on the vise jaw, and that makes it a lot more solid for messing with, particularly if I go horizontal like this, then it's really solid. So that helps a lot on clamping things. Also, when I'm clamping something horizontally here, this jaw will want to torque this way, and it does the same thing. It deforms a little bit and gives me more surface touching the workpiece, which is just a very, very handy little addition to this guy. Oh, also I added a bench dog here for very quick, opposition clamping. Oh, and since these are 1/2-inch holes, here we go, 1/2-inch socket head cap with a big washer or whatever kind of thing will allow me to clamp things very quickly. Also, if I want to clamp something that's a large diameter, for instance, I can put a couple of these in, and then I have 3 points holding a large circle. This is so wonderfully versatile. I just love it. Oh, and also, I have 1/2-inch 13 holes all over the bench top here, and I'm going to be adding more. And that allows me to do standard clamping with the clamping set from a milling machine. So when I'm doing welding or other things of that sort, I can really nail stuff right down and keep it where I want it, so while I'm welding it doesn't jump around on me. So anyway, that's my new little play toy. I have more plans in the future for it, but that's enough for now, and it's a long enough video.